is a lot darker than most people would think, and that's really saying something. Hello my friends, my name is AJ and welcome back to my book nook. Today we are doing another AJ Reviews video where I will be talking about The Hunger Games trilogy. The Hunger Games was a massive part of people's lives back when the movies came out in the early 2010s, and I remember it just dominating films and books, and everyone was talking about it. But recently it's kind of fallen off, so of course I've decided, let's talk about this while it's no longer popular. I first read The Hunger Games back when the movies were coming out, and I never really got that into them. I enjoyed them, but it was never something I could really get into. As the years passed though, I thought, maybe I'll give them another shot, so I recently reread them and I really grew to appreciate them. I think there was a lot of things about the books that I didn't really understand or appreciate when I was first reading them when I was 11, 12-ish. And I think that I can appreciate them a lot more as an adult rereading them. Just a heads up for this video, there is going to be some spoilers for some of the books. Just obviously, I'm covering 3 books in a trilogy, which means when I cover the second book, there's going to be some light spoilers for the first book. When I cover the third book, there's going to be some light spoilers for the first 2 books, but I'll try and keep it as spoiler-free as possible. There is going to be a section where I am giving a little opinion piece on it, but that will have lots of spoilers in it, which I will mark out for you so you can skip over it if you don't want to see them. So let's dive right into it. Let's start with the first book, The Hunger Games. So The Hunger Games is a story basically talking about a girl named Katniss who lives in the country of Panem. And in Panem, every single year, 2 children, a boy and a girl between the ages of 12 and 18, are sent to a fight to the death for the country's entertainment and as punishment for a rebellion. When Katniss's sister is chosen to be the tribute for her district, she decides to take her place instead, and from there she gets thrown into this death games where she must learn how to make allies and survive with the abilities that she has been taught from her father. One of the things that really bothered me when I first read this book, and something that still bothered me to this day, is that I don't find Katniss to be a very likable character in this book at all. I understand that Katniss has grown up in a very difficult setting where not a lot of people have helped her, so it makes sense that she wouldn't really trust people helping her without wanting something in return. But it gets a little bit irritating to read. There's a difference between writing your character realistic and writing your character interestingly, and there is a way that you can do that. I just don't think Katniss is a very fun character to read from the perspective of. Like I said, I get it. The fact that she's angry all the time at everyone, the fact that she's distrustful, it makes sense for her character, but it's not an interesting thing to read about. I want it to have a little bit more depth to it. And the fact that she hates Peeta from the moment she meets him just because he was kind to her without wanting anything in return doesn't make any sense to me. And if there was something in the book about Katniss thinking that there is no goodness left in the world, then maybe it would make sense. But the fact that she knows that her sister is good and will do things for people without asking for things in return, the fact that she knows that her mother will do this, the fact that she knows that Gale will do this, but she for some reason doesn't trust that Peeta will, it doesn't really make sense to me, and it just kind of irritates me. Having said that, there is a lot about this book that I really do like. Most of the book isn't actually spent in the games, which I really enjoy. I enjoy that we get to see kind of the behind the scenes of it, that we get to see the decadence and how awful the Capitol is and how much they just see this event as an entertainment, because it really helps to have us get more and more angry at it. Because obviously we know that having a bunch of children fight to the death is not a good thing, but to see how much these people enjoy it, to see how much they don't care for these kids' lives and see them as celebrities, it's really just terrible, and it helps us to understand how bad it is entirely. I also think that if we spent most of the book in the games, it wouldn't be that interesting, because there are big time jumps in the games where not much is happening, and also I feel like it could get a little bit brutal if we were spending so much time focusing on that. But she handles the games really, really well by not covering in too much detail the gruesomeness of the deaths of the tributes, which I really appreciate because, like I said, they are just children, and I think that that was the best way that she could have handled it. In the games itself, we do get to see a variety of ways that people are able to handle it, whether that be teaming up only to betray people in the end, whether that be teaming up to people that you truly are going to be an ally to and do consider a friend, whether that is simply camouflaging yourself and running away and being sneaky, or whether that is letting someone go because you feel that you want to repay them for the kindness they showed someone else from your district. And I really like that. I really like that we got to see some people being trusting, some people being very calculated, some people who are very clearly afraid to be there but are using that fear to be their strength. And I like that we got to see those different strategies rather than just focusing on Katniss and her own strategy. We got to see other people's experiences as well. Obviously, it is all from Katniss's perspective, but we do get to see other people's experiences by her interacting with them. The second book in the Hunger Games trilogy is Catching Fire. So in this book, Katniss and Peeta have now survived the Hunger Games. They are victors and they think they've escaped it. And after their victory tour around Panem, they discover that they will be sent back to the Hunger Games in the Quarter Quell, where all of the players are previous victors. I really like Katniss a lot more in this one. I think that she's grown as a character. I think that she's written a little better, honestly. And I think that we do get to dive into her mind and her mental state and her PTSD from being in the games in a really interesting and well done way. We get to see Katniss experiencing flashbacks and these terrible, terrible nightmares, which have only grown from before she was in the games to now, including things from the games. And I think that we really get to dive into that in a very well done way. I think we get to see her survivor's guilt of feeling awful that she has actually killed people now, and how she wonders what she can do because obviously she is still a child. She's 16, 17-ish in this book, and it's just really sad, honestly, but it's really well done. We're also introduced to some of the previous victors, and I think that they really add something to the books. We're introduced to Johanna, who is from the Lumber District, and she is such a fun character because she is like Katniss if Katniss had nothing else to lose. I probably shouldn't call her the fun character, but you know what I mean. She is completely filterless. She expresses her distaste with the games in the Capitol completely out in the open. And I think that that is such an interesting thing because we do see that Katniss hates the Capitol. We do see that most of the people hate the Capitol, but Johanna does it in such a way that it's so out there and so bold because, like I said, she has nothing else to lose. And she really does have a lot in common with Katniss, but she's just a lot more blunt about it. We're also introduced to my personal favorite, which is Finnick from the Fishing District. He is such an interesting character as well because we do get to kind of see how these different victors have handled their past and have handled their experience in the games. And Finnick handles it through this kind of bravado of false confidence and this flirtatious, sarcastic, fun, charismatic person that he is, but you can kind of tell that that's all a shell around him, but he's still just a very likable character, and I really enjoy him. Again, we have a lot more focus on what's happening before the games. The first part of the book is them going on their victory tour, and we kind of get to see the sparks of a rebellion beginning, and I think that that's a really good choice because obviously we know that the other districts, except for the careers and the Capitol, aren't really happy with the games or the Capitol, and so getting to see those sparks of that really helps to pull together, and I think really sets the tone for the rest of the book. When we dive into the games itself, I think it's a lot more action-packed. Obviously, Katniss has a lot more experience with the games now. She's been in there once, she knows what to expect, and because all the other people who are there have also won games, they're also very brutal and they know what they're doing. And so when Katniss goes into the games, there's a lot of action, a lot of stuff is happening very fast, and the way the arena is designed is that something is always happening, which is just very interesting, and I think it works really, really well. We also get to see them have a little bit of fun. There are some moments where they're kind of joking around and having fun with each other, and I think that that's a really good addition, because even though they're in this terrible situation, they're still able to be making friends with each other and joking around and having fun and making these allies, and I think that's a really nice touch, especially because we haven't really seen Katniss get to have that fun except for when she's with Gale before, and I think getting to see her make these other friends and really bond with people is a really great addition, and it shows that even in these terrible situations, they're still able to find some goodness in each other. Okay, so now on to the third book in the series, which is Mockingjay. Mockingjay takes place after catching fire and after being escaped from the arena. Katniss is now expected to be part of the rebellion in District 13 and is expected to be a symbol of the rebellion. This is probably my least favorite book, and I'll tell you why. Its main focus is kind of the politics of war and the experience of war and Katniss being made into a symbol. And while that is interesting, it's a complete and utter shift from the previous two books. And I just feel like I don't really enjoy it as much. There's definitely a lot of action. There's definitely a lot of moments of excitement. I just don't like it as well. There's a lot more of a deep dive into other people's mental states as well. We get to see a lot of terrible things happen to them and how they deal with it. And we get to dive into how war changes people, how even the people on the good side are doing terrible, terrible things that aren't necessarily ethical, and how even the people who are good and even you in those situations might end up doing things that you regret and making these rash decisions that have unintended consequences. It's definitely a very dark book. There's a lot of mentions of people being tortured, being brainwashed, and obviously you know that the enemy is the Capitol, but you also know that there are some people who are in charge in the good side who don't necessarily make good choices when it comes to being a good ethical person. I think it's well written. I think it's very well done. I think it covers some hard topics in a good way, but I just don't find it as interesting as the other two books. So I'm about to dive into what the title is about for this video, but it will be containing a lot of spoilers. So if that's not something that you want, if you haven't read The Hunger Games, then I suggest you don't watch this next part. I'll leave a timestamp down below for you to skip. Okay, so the rest of you who are here should be people who've already read the books or just don't care about spoilers. Let's dive into what I mean when I say that The Hunger Games predicted its own promotion. Like I said at the beginning of this video, The Hunger Games is really, really dark. It's darker than you'd expect, which is saying something for a book about a bunch of kids fighting to the death. Every single character who has been in the games has some sort of trauma and PTSD, and they all deal with it in different ways. Whether that is closing people off, whether that is putting on this bravado of confidence, or whether that is turning to alcoholism. They're all dealing with this trauma in a certain way. And all of them have these terrible things that have happened to them. Haymitch, after winning his games by using the force field, is punished by having his entire family killed. Finnick, after winning at 14, is forced into prostitution only 2 years later as a 16-year-old. It's a really dark book. There are a lot of really dark things that happened in it. But the media doesn't really pick up on that. See, when Katniss and Peeta are in the arena and they decide that they're going to try and do a double suicide in order to get out of there, that is a symbol of the start of the rebellion. But the Capitol and the media don't want to see it as that. So they're pushing the narrative that this is not a rebellion, it was simply star-crossed lovers. It was a love story, it was a romance. When the movies came out, what was the main thing that was promoted? What was the main thing that people talked about? That's right, the love triangle. People were Team Gale or Team Peeta, and it was so much so the idea of, oh, this is a dystopian novel going against the tyrannical government and having a love triangle, that there were so many copycat tries of dystopian novels that tried the same thing and failed. The reason that they weren't as popular as The Hunger Games is because they missed the point. The reason they were popular wasn't because of the love triangle. It was because of the real struggles that these characters have, how deep and dark it gets. Even at the end of the 3rd book, Katniss doesn't really get her happy ending. The war is over, yes, that's great. The capital's gone. But Katniss still struggles with PTSD and depression, even if she has a family, and that's realistic. Because just because you have a family doesn't mean that everything from the past is gonna go away. She's gonna be haunted by that forever because she was a literal child when that happened to her. She was 16 when she went into the games, and she was 17 when she was expected to lead a rebel army. Do you know what I was doing when I was 16 and 17? I couldn't tell you because I don't remember, but definitely not that. The Hunger Games has a lot of dark things in it. We've got the Avoxes, who are people who are considered traitors, who have their tongues cut out and are forced to be servants at the Capitol. Peeta is brainwashed into thinking that the person that he loves is someone that he should be afraid of to the point of wanting to kill her. The Hunger Games is a story about rebellion and doing what's right and finding the people that you care about who make it worth your time to fight. But that's not what the media in the books covered. The media in the books wanted to focus on the romance. And that's exactly the same thing the media in the real world did when the movies came out. They decided to push all that terrible dark stuff to the side and focus solely on what they thought that everyone else could stomach. Welcome back, my non-spoiler friends. So what are my final thoughts? The Hunger Games was incredibly popular at the height of its release. And honestly, I can see why. I didn't really get the books that much when I read them the first time, and I think that they went over my head as a kid because they're really, really good. They cover a lot of really dark topics, but they work it into the story in a way that is interesting without romanticizing it and being very real about the effects of trauma on people's lives. It's a well-written book where these characters are fighting against a tyrannical government, but also dealing with their own problems, and we get to see them becoming friends and dealing with these issues, and I think that it's just such a well done read. Overall, I think that I would give this series a 4.5 Mockingjays out of 5. And if you haven't read the books, or you have but just did quite a few years ago, I highly suggest giving them a read because you might have missed something and you might actually really come to appreciate them. Anyways, that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you want to stick around and see more stuff like this from me. And let me know, have you read The Hunger Games and do you have the same opinion as me? Have you not read The Hunger Games and this made you want to read them? Have you just watched the movies and now you want to read the books? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to have a conversation with all of you, but let's try and keep it as spoiler-free as possible so that everyone can participate in the conversation. But that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see all of you lovely people in the next video.